Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. Our silent interpreter is David Agondoa. Let's start with should. That African leaders have been urged to unite in the fight against climate change as the continent is rich in renewable energy and minerals, a move which could help boost the region's economy. With President William Ruto decrying the high interest rates slapped on Africans, which he says have left many countries in debt crisis.
The second day of the Africa Climate Summit kicked off on a high note at the Kenyatta International Conference Center as African countries called on the global north to take responsibility following the adverse effects of climate change, as they are the major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions.
Many of our countries are headed into debt distress because of climate change. Let's be honest, we are suffering the most, whether it is in the Sahel, with drought, whether it is in the Horn of Africa. The suffering is across the globe, but we carry the biggest brunt. I'll contextualize this. And because of climate change, we are forced to divert resources that are meant for economic growth into dealing with the effects of climate change.
President William Ruto has decried unfair loan terms, saying African states are being pushed to the brink of debt as Africa loses 5 to 15% of its GDP to climate change.
Africa's GDP must therefore be revalued based on its carbon sequestration and biodiversity, which provide global public goods. If this is done, the debt to adjusted GDP ratio of several African countries will be much lower, and they will have greater headroom to borrow more financing to support their development, including investing in the greening of their economies.
The architecture is set up in a manner that if you borrow, it will be difficult for you to pay. And we are saying this in all honesty around how do we get concessional funding? How do we pay as much as others are paying? How do we get Africa away from paying 5 times more?
And while climate activists are against carbon credits, many are stressing that it could soon be the white elephant in the room, with some saying it is greenwashing. African leaders, on the other hand, say they are ready to be involved in the larger conversation as they will not be left behind.
Mr. President.
On his part, U.S. envoy to Kenya, John Kerry, hailed Kenya for its efforts in renewable energy, saying it will fill a gap in the much-needed market. This week's meeting is expected to come up with a Nairobi Declaration, a document that will highlight Africa's united voice in the global climate arena. Helen Aura, NTV.